We would like to welcome back Clene Inc. Clene is a NASDAQ-listed company trading under the symbol CLNN. Clene is a biopharmaceutical company focused on transforming the treatment of neurodegenerative disorders by restoring and protecting neurological function in devastating diseases like ALS and multiple sclerosis. I'd like to introduce Rob Etherington, CEO and President. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll jump straight in. So here's the requisite forward-looking statements, of which I will be making a number as we consider the next steps on a regulatory path for our lead agent, CNM-Au8. So Clene in particular is focused on improving mitochondrial health. The mitochondria is tremendously responsible for everything you and I do to live and walk and eat and chew and talk and breathe. In other words, the function that you and I rely upon. And the problem, of course, is that neurodegenerative diseases remain a major complication that we need to fix. Part of this is that we're aging, but part of this is neurodegenerative diseases are continuing to be a very prevalent cause of death. Indeed, the WHO predicts they'll be the second most prevalent in the next 20 years. And why this is relevant is because impaired mitochondrial activity and compromised cellular metabolism, the way our neurological central nervous systems use energy, is compromised. So what Clene is doing is pioneering the oral administration of this asset. We call it CNM-Au8, and it is treating neurodegenerative diseases as we speak in clinical studies and comprehensive compassionate use programs in ALS, MS, and we have done one study in Parkinson's to target the mitochondrial function via the nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide pathway. So that's a big mouthful, but let's explain what we've got. We've got a number of clinical studies we've concluded. Healy with Harvard, Rescue with the top ALS docs in Australia, Visionary in multiple sclerosis, and then Repair to show target engagement. And all of this I'm about to talk about is proprietary to Clene, was born at and is organic to Clene, with 150 plus patents worldwide. We do all of our manufacturing in Maryland, where I just returned from last night, and I'm speaking to you in Salt Lake City, in either case, 90-degree weather. So it's unusual to show a safety slide right at the beginning, but Clene has this ability to do so because we have over now 650 years, in fact, of subject exposure without identified safety signals in any of these three diseases of which we speak. We don't have a single serious adverse event that has been related to drug by any of our clinicians that are involved in our clinical studies, and again, not a single one. And we have AEs, if we get them, that are considered mild to moderate. A nuisance, really, but patients on balance do not discontinue therapy. And this also applies to our long-term exposure. I'm going to come back to that long-term exposure because there's quite a fair amount of it in patients that are outside the clinical program as well, because we're grateful the FDA has approved 4 EAP programs. So here's a very key slide. Our focus has been on ALS disease. Some of you may be familiar with this, Lou Gehrig's. It was famously diagnosed in the 1930s with what we then loaned his name to this disease. But today, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, much more common than you think, and remains a uniformly fatal disease. And patients have very few options. In this country, if you have heterogeneous all-comer ALS disease, there's only 2 therapies you can take, and really primarily one that patients are prescribed. Rest of the world, on balance, most countries, just one. So Clene has been developing our asset to improve survival, to delay clinical worsening, and to preserve function. We've completed the phase 2 study Rescue, the phase 2 study in partnership with the team at Harvard, Mass General Hospital, and 50 plus other centers of excellence. And we've completed 2 compassionate use programs. Well, completed. Those EAPs are still underway. We're still treating drugs in all these cases for patients that have moved on to open label. So let's talk about what we saw. The Rescue study was a 9-month study for which we've continued to follow people now for 3 years. The Healy study was a 6-month study for which we've now treated people also over 3 years. And we saw survival in both programs. Survival in the open label, the 45 patient study was not powered well enough at 45 subjects or 45 patients to show survival in the pre-specified, but we did see it pretty actively and consistently since in the open label. The Healy study, we did see it in the 6-month program that was statistically significant in the double-blind pre-specified secondary endpoint. And again, like rescue, it continues in the open label. We've also seen survival against PROACT, which is a patient database of like patients that are in biostatistical terms called propensity matched, covariate adjusted. We're kind of trying to put apples to apples in databases. And we saw statistical significance there also. We also saw in the rescue study over the open label preserved function. And critically, very critically, we saw the biomarker neurofilament change in the Healy program, both in the primary double-blind period, pre-specified, and in the open label. That's relevant because taken on balance with safety, it's led to the submission of a briefing book that Clene has just sent in to the FDA. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, the same asset, CNM-Au8, has also concluded a multiple sclerosis study that we concluded during the pandemic of COVID. We only were able to get half the patients in, expected we'd see nothing in this program because it was only half enrolled. Yet we found with the primary endpoint of vision and the secondary endpoint of function, how patients have fine motor, think, their cognition, their walk test, and their vision. As the secondary, we found in that data that we had significantly improved vision and a global neurological improvement taken in balance. And we just presented at the American Academy of Neurology meetings in April in Denver that the longer you're on our drug, the longer your vision improved. We also showed that the longer you're on our drug, the longer your cognition improved. And as you see here from the right side, even probably equally very relevant is that the placebo subjects who rolled over into active, which the vast majority of our subjects did, their vision and their cognition improved, meaning that even after you missed a year of therapy, you can start to catch up to the patients who were originally on therapy. This is categorically a market need in MS, function improvement. With MS drugs currently, of which there's $26 billion prescribed every year across the disease-modifying therapy categories for MS drugs, we have a sweet opportunity because function improvement is still a market need. Not a single one of these DMTs is indicated to improve vision and cognition. They're indicated to stop the body from attacking itself. Our drug would go on top of these other assets, as it did in this study, and improve function and cognition. So next steps. So what we're doing, and we just presented this in a press release a few days ago, we have submitted our briefing book to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in connection with a Type C meeting that they've granted us to obtain FDA feedback on our potential pathway to the possibility of accelerated approval. And why this is relevant is because our briefing book contained a number of new analyses of data, some post-hoc, some pre-specified, from these completed clinical studies of rescue and Healy, and to some degree even the EAP compassionate use, and is designed to address a series of comments the FDA made in a prior meeting to Clene in December. What we've done there is given them more neurofilament data, more mature set of survival and function, and work to correlate these together. And Clene believes that these analyses serve to further demonstrate the potential for AU8 as a treatment for patients living with ALS. And we hope it informs and fundamentally addresses the agency's request to provide more information about our asset, because certainly we understand, and we do that, as do the patients, the need in a uniformly fatal disease for new therapies. So we're looking very much forward to having ALS FDA engagement later on this quarter, and also to have, by the end of the year, is our goal to have a multiple sclerosis discussion with the agency as well, as we prepare and plan in both cases for a phase 3. So just to close now to my last slide. We have a very unique situation here, strong IP, safe drug, a lot of clinical benefit, and Clene's AU8 is the first gold nanocrystal suspension ever for the treatment of solving some of these vexing problems, function decline, and to actually give a benefit to function, and more importantly, survival in these very difficult to treat diseases. So we're grateful for you, the investors' interest in Clene.
Thank you so much. A few questions. Matt asked for the NIH grant. What is the negotiated reimbursement amount per patient?
We haven't disclosed that, Matt. What we've done is that 45 million, and we've just basically reworked that budget, by the way, to increase the total number of patients by 80% that we're able to provide. So that 180 patients is on top of the 250 plus that Clene's already paying for entirely. But that $45 million is over the life of a 4-year program. So we get roughly 11 per year, and that pays for labor and materials and also all the clinical expenses that happen at the local sites.
And Cam wants to know, what was the severity of the patients who received the oral treatments?
Depends on which study. The rescue study, they were early. They'd had symptoms for about a year with diagnosis only for 4 months. In the case of the Harvard Healey study, they'd had symptoms for longer than a year, could be 1 to 3 years, and they'd been diagnosed for 6 to 12 months. So the way we characterize this is the rescue study are kind of early patients, early in their tenure of disease. Healey is middle range in a disease that unfortunately has mortality and death in 2 to 5 years. To already have the disease diagnosed for 6 to 12 is kind of middle of the range. And then the EAP programs, which were also tracking survival, and we've already demonstrated that in other press releases, those are patients that are very sick that couldn't actually meet the entry criteria for either of these other programs. So kind of early, medium, and late patients.
Perfect. Thank you for this thorough update. I want to give you a little bit of time for some closing remarks because we are out of time for our conference. But what closing remarks do you have today, Rob?
We're looking very much forward to this FDA interaction that will teach us whether or not we can submit an NDA, even whilst we at the same time prepare a phase 3 program that would be conditional upon an accelerated approval thesis. But we believe that we have significant evidence that supports AU8's therapeutic benefit in neurodegenerative diseases, and especially we're working night and day to see if we can solve this and help in the case of ALS. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. All right, everyone. In just a minute, you'll be redirected to the registration page for our next conference. It has been a great long day, great 2 days, actually. And on behalf of all of us at Emerging Growth, thank you to all of our presenters and attendees for making this such a fantastic success. Remember, a complete replay of this conference will be on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Emerging Growth Conference. And also follow us on Twitter at Emerging Growth C. We post all new information on Twitter. I'm Anna Berry. On behalf of myself and our entire team, we thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.